So
Yes po, attorney.
we're on our second week, so 2 more weeks, and we're done with the phase one. So here we will be discussing course three, which is government and its powers, and course four, crimes under penalties. So this is a good combination of courses, no? Itong course three at course four, because they all involve the government. So yung government yung mas magiging focus nito, no? So let's proceed first with course 3, the government and its powers. So we have uh, before we begin discussing the different branches of government, I think it's just equally important to discuss yung uh, sorry, wait lang. Okay. It's equally important to discuss the inherent powers of the state. Ano ba ang mga kapangyarihan ng isang estado? Okay. But just to be clear, ano ba yung difference ng state at government? Uh, if you have already taken siguro politics and governance, no? Uh, you'll realize that yung uh, government is just one of the elements of a state, no? Meron tayong people, sovereignty, territory, and then you have your government. So that is one inherent power. That is one just one element of the state, no? Yung government mo. So yung state has three inherent powers. Meron tayong police power. Basically, the police power is more on the regulation of human conduct. So, dito sa police power, ginagamit ito to sandali lang, just plugging in my laptop. Okay. So, this police power is basically a broad parang set of powers, no, that encompasses everything that is related to regulation of human behavior. So the very reason kasi why we have our government is it will act as our parang regulator, and that is exactly why police power is there. And there's no really one face of police power. Maraming pwedeng maging muka ang police power, at hindi lang yung literal na police na yung mga nasa kalsada, no? It could be parang basically every service that the government does is in line with this police power na tinatawag natin, no? Eminent domain naman is a very specific power in the sense that uh, it is very specific in a sense that um, it only pertains to private property, no? So the government can take private property for government use, for public use, no? So for example, ang classic example nito is yung road widening projects, mga ganyan, may bubuuing bagong kalsada, may bubuuing mga government buildings, ganyan. And pero wala nang mapaglagyan. So they expropriate yung mga private lands. However, meron siyang katapat na just compensation, no? What we mean by just compensation is yung fair and full equivalent ng property. So for example, if kung madadaanan yung property mo ng road widening, for example, do you have can you really oppose yung road widening na yun? No. If it's public purpose, the government has the power to take that from you, your private property. But may obligation ng state doon. The obligation of the state there is the state must pay a reasonable price, yung full and fair value ng property mo. Okay? So, taxation naman is the power of the state to collect taxes for government, yung para sa functionings ng government, no? Meron tayong tinatawag na yung taxes ang lifeblood ng state. Taxes ang lifeblood ng government. Kasi without the government, or without our taxes, uh, hindi makakapag-function ang ano natin, ang government, no? So, am I clear so far? Malinaw ba yung reception ko? Kasi sabi niya dito unstable yung internet.
Yes po.
Yes po, attorney.
Hopefully,
Yes po, attorney.
hopefully magtuloy-tuloy na siya, no? All right. So the government is so the Philippine government is composed of three branches, no? The legislative department, the executive department, and the judicial department. So here in the legislative department, their main function is to enact laws. Sila yung gumagawa ng batas, no? And the Philippine Congress is a bicameral system. Ibig sabihin, there are two houses, there are two chambers that we're talking about, and they need to work hand in hand, and they must parang in order to make a law, dapat dumaan yan sa dalawang house na tinutukoy natin. No? So, we have the House of Senate na 20 composed of 24 senators, at most 2 terms, 2 consecutive terms, and one term for them is 6 years. No? The House of Representatives, on the other hand, sa ngayon na 300 plus na siya, at most 3 consecutive years per term. So, 3 terms sila, and then 3 years ang bawat term. So, all in all, kapag na-re-elect siyang ng 2 beses, kung baka naging 3, ano niya yung 3 terms, it's a total of 9 years. Sa Senate naman, 6 years ang isang term, and then maximum of 2 re-elections, so 12 years ang maximum. No? Before they have to go through it again, kumbaga parang sa ano kasi, kailangan nila magpalipas, tas pwede na ulit silang tumakbo, no? Alright. So, here, dun sa House of Representatives natin, meron tayong tinatawag na district representatives. Yun yung mga representatives na binoboto natin sa districts natin, no? In my case, in second district ng Pangasinan, no? There are 6 districts in Pangasinan, so we have 6 representatives in Pangasinan. In your case, ilan ba yung district representatives nyo? Pero you only vote 1, ha? Kung nasang district ka, yun lang ang boboto mo. So 80% of House of Representatives is composed of these district representatives. Yung party list representative naman, this is your vote for party list. Everyone votes for a party list. Lahat ng tao magboboto ng isang party list lang. So they're elected at large. They are supposed to represent underrepresented sectors, no? Marginalized sectors, underrepresented sectors of society. Supposed to be, ano? So yan. This is the composition ng Philippine Congress. The Philippine Congress or the Legislative Department is composed of the House of Senate and House of Representatives. Sa executive naman, of course, we have the main function of the executive department is to enforce or implement laws. So kung sa legislative department silang gumagawa ng batas, ang purpose lang ng executive department is to enforce or implement yung batas na ginawa ng Congress. If there's no law, walang i-implement si executive department. Pero we have a lot of laws, so we will have no issue with that. No? So the executive department is composed of the president, walang re-election ng president, 6 years term. The vice president may be re-elected once for another 6-year term, no? So unlike yung president, pwede siyang ma-re-elect, no? Yung vice president, pero once lang. And the members of the cabinet, yung secretaries of different departments who are presidential appointees. So for example, yung mga different departments, they form part of the cabinet, no? Executive Secretary, the Department, Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary whatever, no? Kung ano mang department ang sakop nun, yung presidential appointees, they are members of the cabinet. So we have what we call itong alter ego doctrine, which says that the secretaries of the cabinet are alter egos of the president. Their actions are presumed to be the actions of the president. Kasi isipin niyo, logistically kasi, if the president will have to handle all of the departments, will have to issue rules for every department. Imagine how hard the task of the president will be, ano? So meron siyang tinatawag na alter ego o yung mga tao that acts as his clone, no? Clone sila. Ibig sabihin, bakit sila in a sense they can be parang pwede mo silang sabihin as clones, no? Because their actions, kung ano man yung ginawa nila, attributed yun dun sa president. So if whatever they did is parang kung ano man yung ginawa nung alter egos, it reflects on the president. It is as if it is the act of the president, no? So that is our alter ego doctrine. Siguro one of the more important na immunities ng president is that he is immune from suits. So for 6 years, hindi siya pwedeng kasuhan. Someone should be happy. Okay. So, the president has immunity from suits. Why is that? Kasi the president has gaya nga sabi ko kanina, the president has so much to do, and if he will have to entertain every suit that is hurdled against him, mawawalan siya ng oras for other things na more important. And finally, we have the Judicial Department, which is Article 8. Kung si Legislative Department ay gumagawa ng batas, si Executive Department ay nagpapatupad ng batas, Judicial Department is here to interpret our laws, no? The judiciary is composed of the justices of the Supreme Court, led by the Chief Justice, the Court of Appeals, Sandigan Bayan, Court of Appeals, RTCs, and MTCs. So yan yung hierarchy na. Ang pinakamataas ay yung Supreme Court, and then Court of Appeals, and then actually yung Court of Appeals, Sandigan Bayan, ng Court of Tax Appeals are co-equals, no? The RTC is at the lower level, and then the lowest is the MTC. Okay? So, and there are also Sharia courts, for Muslims, no? The judiciary has fiscal autonomy. Ibig sabihin, the judiciary parang has its rule-making powers. The judiciary has its financial autonomy. Meron siyang, for example, yung budget ng judiciary is just given to them, parang directly binibigay na sa kanila automatically. The Supreme Court and Bank sits as presidential electoral tribunals on election contests concerning the president or vice president. Now, if there are election protests election protests concerning the president or vice president, the Supreme Court sits and bank, or ibig sabihin, lahat sila, they will sit as a presidential electoral tribunal. So, in a sense, iba siya iba yung hindi siya regular na function ng Supreme Court, which is ang gagawin lang nila doon is to settle the contest between the contesting parties doon sa presidency or the vice presidency, no? So the Supreme Court is a different entity from a presidential electoral tribunal. Kaya yung decisions ng presidential electoral tribunal can be parang appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court justices are appointed by the President after shortlisting by the JBC. So yung justices ng Supreme Court, actually kahit hindi nga yung sa Supreme Court, they are appointed by the President, no? But the President can only choose from those shortlisted by the Judicial and Bar Council, no? So hindi naman siya kung sino lang, no? The Judicial and Bar Council will have to screen first kung sino yung shortlisted. Okay. So here, in terms of powers, in terms of function and powers, nandiyan dyan naman, makikita nyo dyan, na-discuss natin kanina, propose, enact, amend, and repeal laws. By propose, we mean mag-issue ng bills, ganyan, enact, amend, magbago ng batas, repeal, tanggalin yung batas at palitan ng bago, implement existing laws, yung sa executive at sa judicial, settle actual controversies. So the powers of the Legislative Department is yung appropriation, pag-appoint, actually, di ba, mention naman, nakikita nyo lately, no? Yung mga bagong appointees ni President Duterte, their appointments were not acted upon by Congress kasi kung mapapansin nyo, di ba, meron tinatawag silang commission on appointments, and that commission on appointments comes from the Legislative Department, no? They will have to parang confirm yung appointment ng isang appointee ng president. So hindi siya automatic na kung in-appoint ng president isang tao at hindi nag-agree ang Congress, the person cannot sit as an appointed president, as an appointed secretary. Taxation. The Legislative Department has the power to impose taxes. The collection is in the executive, pero yung imposition ng taxes must go to parang belongs to the Congress, no? So, ayan. In terms of sa executive department naman, the executive department has the power of control, yung budgeting, he's the commander-in-chief, he has the martial law powers, he is the chief diplomat, yung ano niya, yung chief foreign, parang siya yung pinaka mataas na foreign architect. Siya yung foreign architect ng ating foreign relations with other countries, and he also has the power to pardon anyone. Unlimited, hindi limited yung power of pardon niya. And the judicial departments, as the judicial power, of course, the power to implement and the power to interpret our laws, ganyan, and the power of judicial review, the power to act, the power to review acts of the other branches when they are parang nag-exceed dun sa kanilang functions. Okay. So we have the concept of separation of powers, ano? We are when we talk of separation of powers, itong tatlong branches na to are separate. Hindi dapat nangikialam yung isang branch over another branch. Pero we also have what we call yung checks and balances. 'Di ba? Sinasabi natin that the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary must be distinct, hindi pala distinct, but they must be independent of each other. They can function, they should function independently of each other. Dapat hindi dinidiktahan ng branches, ng three branches yung isa't isa. However, there are instances when we have these what we call checks and balances. Ito ay mga paraan kung paano ma-check ng bawat branch yung actions ng other branch. This is the exception to the general rule na separation of powers. The checks and balances are, for example, the president can veto laws passed by Congress. Kung ayaw ng president yung batas na na ginawa ng Congress, the president can always veto that. The president can say, oh, hindi ayoko yan. I don't like this provision, ito because ganyan, ganyan, ganyan. Ibabalik niya yan sa Congress. So that is one way to check yung powers ng Congress, no? On the part of Congress naman, the Congress can confirm or reject the appointments of the president, gaya nga nung sinabi ko sa inyo kanina. Ilan ba yun na appointees ni President Duterte ang hindi kinonfirm yung appointment? And they can remove the president from office in exceptional circumstances, no? So in impeachment proceedings, pwedeng tanggalin ng president sa kanyang position. Not just the president, but all the impeachable officials: the president, the vice president, the ombudsman, the justices, and the members of the constitutional commissions. And the justices of the Supreme Court, which is the Judicial Department, can overturn unconstitutional laws. So pwedeng tanggalan ng effect ng unconstitutional laws, pwedeng tanggalan ng Supreme Court ng effect ang isang batas that is unconstitutional. Kasi yun nga yung point kung bakit nandiyan ng Congress, ang Supreme Court, no, to declare that if yung mga batas natin ay unconstitutional. But the justices are appointed by the president, which could be kind of a check and balance, no? So ito yung mga mechanisms to check each other. But in general, there is a separation of powers that we are talking about, no? So that basically is Philippine government, no? Meron pa pala dito. In terms of qualifications, iba-iba yan. Nandiyan naman siya. All of them must be, yung mga president, vice president, senator, district or party list representatives must be all natural-born Filipino, must all be registered voters. In terms of literacy, must be able to read and write. So that's in the Constitution, no? In terms of age, kapag president or vice president, 40, 35 sa senator, 25 sa district or party list representatives. In terms of residency, 10 years sa president, sa senator, 2 years, sa district or party list representative, 1 year. In the district where he seeks to be elected, no? So yun. So that's practically the Philippine government in a nutshell. So let's proceed. Siguro ituloy-tuloy ko na lang kasi para tuloy-tuloy tayo. So crimes under penalties. So these are the principles of criminal law that we need to take in mind, no? At ito yung mga pinaka-basic na itong discussion na to tonight will just be the basics of criminal law kasi the other things are technical already and I don't want to overwhelm you. Hindi ko kayo dapat hindi kayo na overwhelmed, no? Pero if you're feeling overwhelmed now, uh, there's a chance na parang it may be too complex already. So, yung generality. So we have three principles of criminal law that we abide by. Yung generality, territoriality, and prospectivity. So first, when we say generality, we are talking here of who. Kung sino ba yung mga subject ng criminal laws ng Pilipinas. Sino ba ang mga pwedeng mapanagot sa batas ng Pilipinas. Here, ang sabi dyan sa principle ng generality, anyone who lives or sojourns within the territory of the Philippines may be held liable by our criminal laws. So, basically, lahat ng nandito sa Pilipinas can be held liable for our criminal laws. Why is that? So, ibig sabihin nun, pati mga aliens, we don't mean aliens na extraterrestrial, by aliens, we mean yung mga foreigners. Pati mga foreigners covered. Why? Because when they are in our country, they enjoy our protection. They enjoy the protection of the Philippine government. So, it is also parang logically they also need to be subject to our laws in order for parang 'di ba they have our protection, so we can also have something to parang to make them accountable for, 'di ba? So basically everyone who is stepping in the Philippine territory can be covered by our Philippine laws. Next, territoriality. Okay, in general, our territory, no? I mean, our criminal laws dito sa ano na to sa ano na to pala before I forget. Dito sa dito sa ano na to sa principle na to, uh, parang it talks about where, no? Saan ba nai-enforce yung mga batas natin? Criminal laws. We're talking only of criminal laws. So our criminal laws are enforceable within the territory of the Philippines. Outside, hindi na nag-a-apply yung ano natin, yung Philippine laws on crimes, no? Philippine Code of Crimes natin, hindi na yan applicable sa ibang bansa. Except there are certain exceptions dyan. Mga airplanes registered in the Philippines, yung mga marine vessels registered in the Philippines, although that may differ depende sa theory na pag-aaralan nyo later. Also in our embassies, no? Our embassies are considered as extensions of our territory, so our Philippine laws apply there, no? So territoriality, that is the concept of territoriality. So, yung sa generality ang sinasagot niya, who, sino ang mga pwede maging liable, lahat ng nandito sa Pilipinas. Territoriality, saan siya applicable within the territory except doon sa mga extensions ng ating territory. And prospectivity is, so in the concept of prospectivity naman, the laws look forward. Ibig sabihin, kung ngayon lang naipasa yung batas na to, yung isang batas ay naipasa lang ngayon which makes an act illegal, ano siya, hindi mo pwedeng hindi mo pwedeng parusahan kung ginawa niya yung act before the law was enacted. So, perspective lang siya. It only looks forward, it doesn't look back. Except if the criminal law except if the law is favorable sa accused or sa favorable sa tao, no? For example, merong batas na nagmi-minimize ng penalty ng isang certain crime. And then later on, that person parang nagkaroon ng batas na yun, pwedeng i-retroactive, pwedeng pabaliktad. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng may apply sa kanya yung bagong batas because it is favorable sa kanya. Okay? So, felony, when we talk of felony, no? Ito malaki for some reason malaking fuss yung distinction ng felony at crime sa ating revised penal code. So sa criminal law or criminal justice system in general, no? Kasi kung felony, sinasabing felony, hindi yun usually yun yung mga nandoon sa revised penal code. Other crimes that may not be other offenses that may not be in the revised penal code are called crimes. Okay? You should remember that distinction, no? So a felony is an act or omission punishable by law. So when we say act or omission, yung act, yung may ginawa ka. There's a positive act on your end. May ginawa kang something, no? Kunwari, binaril mo yung isang tao, etc. That is an act. However, there are instances when an omission is also punishable. Yung wala kang ginawa, pero nakalimutan may nakalimutan kang gawin, no? May hindi ka nagawa kaya nagkaroon ng harm. For example, you failed to nakalimutan mong kung ikaw ay police, nakalimutan mong isara yung ano no, nakalimutan mong isara yung kulungan, nakalabas sila. That is omission. Wala kang ginawa doon. Pero meron kang hindi nagawa. So that is an omission. So a felony can either be an act or omission committed through culpa, which is yung usually ito yung mga unintentional pero you have fault. For example, may pagkakamali ka. You have negligence, na naging pabaya ka. Imprudence, hindi ka parang hindi ka prudent, hindi ka alert, kumbaga. You have lack of skill or ano ka, may kakulangan ka sa skill or may kakulangan ka sa foresight, hindi mo anticipate, no? Or that is culpa. Or it could also be dolo. Dolo is with malice or deceit, no? May talagang sinasadya mo. Okay? So again, we need to understand the distinction between a felony and a crime. Meron tayong tinatawag na malum in se and malum prohibitum or mala prohibita for plural, no? Sa malum in se, these are felonies or crimes that are parang they are evil in nature. Kumbaga, for example, talaga naman na bawal ang talagang bawal ang pagpatay, talagang bawal ang pagnanakaw, etc. Those are malum in se. And usually, yung mga malum in se na mga felonies are found in the revised penal code. Yung mala prohibitan naman is it is illegal, it is punishable only because it is prohibited by a certain law, no? Hindi siya inherently evil, hindi siya talaga masama as it is, pero pinagbabawal siya because of a certain law. For example, yung use of marijuana, that is that's a bad example. Basically, what we're talking here of mala prohibita is ano siya, it is not evil in itself. Parang usually hindi siya nahanap sa RPC, but it is in a different law, and it is prohibited only because it is prohibited by law. I'll get back to you on an example later kung maalala ko, no? So, ano yung effect ng distinction ng mala in se and mala prohibita, no? Sa malum in se kasi, good faith is a defense. So kung kunwari you had parang wala ka talagang kinalaman dun sa offense, mga ganyan, or yung kumbaga you have good faith when you did it, that is acceptable as a defense in malum in se, pero in malum prohibitum hindi yun valid as a defense, no? So yun. Yung prostitution is malum in se, no? Pero that is I think that is debatable kung tatanungin niyo. Okay, circumstances affecting liability. So, ano yung mga tinatawag natin na circumstances affecting liability? Basically, is a person liable or not? Hindi lang yun ganun kasimple, no? There are instances na yes, merong nangyaring krimen, no? But there are instances na either nawawalan ng parang penalty, or nababawasan yung penalty, or nababawasan yung gravity ng offense, depende doon sa circumstances na nakapalibot sa case, no? For example, may namatay, at may pumatay, hindi lang ganoon kasimple 'yun, no, kung paano i-determine kung siya ba ay kung gaano kalaki ano ang penalty niya, kabigat ang penalty niya, no? Or gaano siya ka-liable for the offense. For example, sa justifying circumstances, dito, it is as if walang crime, no? For example, if you acted in self-defense, there's no crime there, no? Walang crime doon. Kahit na napatay mo yung tao, if you're acting on self-defense, provided that the elements of self-defense are there, it can be justified, no? Pwedeng ano ka, pwedeng ma-exempt ka from liability. Another issue, if you acted under a state of necessity, etc. There is a listing under the revised penal code. So exempting circumstances naman ay minority. For example, atong exempting circumstances naman ay yes, there is a crime, no? May krimen na naganap. However, there's a crime that was committed, pero there is no criminal, no? Because yung tao na yun exempted by law, no? For example, if a person is minor, may nangyaring krimen, yes, but minor siya. By minor, we mean ano ha, merong distinction later kung ano yung minor, kung acting with discernment or acting without discernment, and may age ranges na kailangan mong i-consider. But that is already confusing na yun for this purpose, no? Minority, accident, for example, if there's an accident, there's a crime, yes, but it was an accident. So it could be exempted because that is provided under the law. Next is mitigating circumstances. Kung yung dalawang nauna kanina is mawawala talaga yung justifying exempting, mawawalan ka talaga ng liability, doon sa mitigating mababawasan lang yung penalty that you will incur from the crime that you committed. For example, if it is parang a crime of passion, mga ganyan, or there is sufficient provocation, pinoprovoke ka talaga eh. Okay. And may ginawa kang krimen, yes. Pero because of these circumstances, nababawasan yung liability mo. Marami yan. Mahaba yung list natin ng mitigating circumstances under the law. Another thing is in aggravating circumstances. Kung yung sa justifying exempting, exempted sila, walang liability. Sa mitigating na bawasan, sa aggravating lumala, no? Mas tumaas yung penalty. Why? Kasi dito sa aggravating circumstances, these are circumstances na that makes the crime even more evil, no? For example, ginawa niya talaga ng gabi dahil nighttime na. Ginawa niya talaga ng gabi dahil ayaw niyang makilala siya. Hindi ayaw niyang mapanagot sa ginawa niya. Evident premeditation, yung talagang plinano ng maigi yung krimen at hindi lang siya purely out of the blue, no, na ginawa. Talagang pinag-isipan yung gagawin. That makes it more evil. And treachery. Treachery, for example, nakatalikod siya. Tsaka mo sinaksak o tsaka mo binaril without affording him the opportunity to defend himself or herself. That is an aggravating circumstance. And basically, tumataas ang penalty because of these aggravating circumstances. Okay. Alternative circumstances are those na pwedeng magpataas ng penalty or pwedeng magpababa, depende sa tao. Ay depende sa circumstance, no? Depende sa sitwasyon. For example, yung intoxication, there are instances that intoxication parang diminishes yung penalty, pero there are instances that intoxication is parang makes the crime more evil. Okay? Also education, no? For example, in theft, sa education pag yung mga or there are hindi pa theft. There are crimes, for example, na hindi talaga alam ng tao that it is a crime, no? Or it is a felony because of his lack of education. So, pwede siyang pwedeng ma-minimize yung penalty. Pero education is also an aggravating circumstances in crimes na parang napalala because of his educational attainment, no? may mga dahil matalino siya, dahil nakapag-aral siya, mas lalong lumala yung ay mas lalong parang yun yung nag-embolden sa kanya to do the crime. That is ano yun? That is that increases the penalty, no? Relationship, for example, there are instances na pwede mong there are instances that the law cannot uh, parang nire-recognize ng batas na hindi na dapat parang gawing liable yung isang tao for an offense sa relationship, no, because you are related. Pero in certain cases like parricide, yung relationship matters and it aggravates the offense. Napapataas yung penalty because of that. Okay, there are a few more yung sa principles governing penalties. Why do we have penalties to begin with, no? First is retribution. Uh, ang concept ng retributive justice is parang you pay for what you did, no? Yun yung retribution. And your penalty must be commensurate to your crime. Dapat yung penalty mo ay naaayon sa bigat ng ginawa mo. Which is alam niyo parang reading yung mga questions niyo doon sa Google form natin, parang you have an issue with this retributive justice na tinatawag natin. Reformation. Okay. Yung kinukulong yung isang tao or pinapatawan ng penalty yung isang tao para magbago siya. That is one of the purposes of penalties. And social defense. What do we mean by social defense? Pinaparusahan ng tao, kinukulong yung tao para he cannot para maprotektahan ng iba pang mga tao from the evils that may be caused by the person who is a criminal, no? So yan. No excessive fines and no cruel and unusual punishment must be inflicted. So ano lang tayo, ang penalties lang natin ay usually mga kulong. Wala tayong death penalty so far, no? Pero the Constitution does not really prevent the Congress from imposing from enacting death penalty again. No ex post facto law or bill of attainder may be enacted. Na-discuss ko na kanina yan, no? Who may be liable? Sino ba yung mga pwede maging liable? Yung principal, kung sino yung talagang gumawa ng act. Yung mga accomplices, yung mga hindi principal, yung mga hindi sila mismo ang gumawa pero they did something to facilitate or padaliin yung pag-commit ng crime. And yung accessories. Yung accessories naman, they come after. So, for example, tumulong sila para itago yung tao, no? Those are accessories na nakagawa ng krimen. And what we have this concept of subsidiary imprisonment. In subsidiary imprisonment, dito kung di mo kayang magbayad nung fine na inimpose ng batas sa'yo, for example, meron ng decision, no? At hindi mo kayang bayaran yung fine, pwede ka na lang magpakulong. Pwede ka magpakulong for a certain number of days, depende sa amount ng fine na babayaran mo. Before the new law was enacted, bago lang yung batas, parang 2018 yata yun, 2017, I'm not sure. Before, ang computation is kapag yung fine ay parang ang equivalent ng isang araw na mababawas dun sa fine mo is 8 pesos. So ibig sabihin kung ilang 8 pesos, kung ilang araw magkano yung fine mo, 8 pesos ang mababawas kada araw. Pero ngayon na bago na 'yan because of the new law. I'm not sure actually kung magkano na 'yan ngayon. Okay, so that is crimes. Okay, ito pala. Meron tayong dito categories ng penalties. Death, of course, is the capital punishment, which is right now hindi pa siya enacted. I mean, pala siya? Dati meron 'yon, pero that was stopped during the time of I think Gloria Arroyo. Kasi hindi na nabalik. So, meron tayong reclusion perpetua, reclusion temporal, perpetual or temporary absolute disqualification. This applies usually to government employees. Perpetual and temporary special disqualification, prison mayor. Yung corrective penalties natin, prison correctional, arresto mayor, suspension destierro. From the top, mula dun sa reclusion perpetua pababa, pakonti ng pakonti yung araw or yung years diyan, no? So suspension distiero, siguro yung banishment ng distiero for example, hindi ka allowed to be somewhere near the crime scene for ano for a certain number of time. Uh, 'Yun. Light penalties naman, meron tayong arresto minor and public censure, pwedeng magkaroon ng fine at all of those categories, and bond to keep the peace. So meron tayong tinatawag na accessory penalties, yan nandiyan naman lahat 'yon. Civil interdiction, pinagbabawalan ka to exercise some of your civil rights. Sa indemnification, pwede may ano siya, pwedeng maging aside from yung penalty mo, pwede kang pagbayarin for example, may nasira or was that me who was disconnected? Hindi naman, no? Okay. And forfeiture na or confiscation of instruments, yung mga yung mga kung may mga illegal or mga ill-gotten na mga bagay diyan, pwedeng i-forfeit 'yon, and payment of costs. So these are all the penalties that are included in our criminal justice system. So, I think that's it. Yung questions na yung susunod. So, we'll take a break for 5 minutes, and then after the break, I will be asking you personally to ask your question, no? If you want to turn on your camera, pwede naman, and you can unmute to ask your question. Para naman mas interactive tayo ng content. No? Sige. 5 minutes tayong mag-break, and we'll go back after 5 minutes. Okay, I'll open the floor for questions. If you have questions in mind. Sige, try ko munang sagutin ito mga nandito, no? Is this tiero a punishment or more like a protection? Well, it is both, no? To protect na rin yung tao from retaliation from others, from yung kunwari napatay niya yung asawa niya or whatever, no? He committed a crime na may disyero na penalty. It is to protect the person na rin from retaliation, pero mostly it is a punishment, no? Kasi banishment yun for to some extent, no? Is the gravity of the crime being considered in the imposition of fine, or in the position of the amount to be paid, yung fine, no? Yeah, sometimes kino-consider yun ng court when making decision, kasi ano naman yun although sometimes may talaga, may fixed na penalty under the code, no? Pero may mga instances din that the court has to decide outside of that, outside of the, I mean, hindi pala outside, within the range na given, pero may kino-consider yung circumstances ng tao. So, not really pegged. No? Hindi siya pegged. So, may ba? Raise your hands if you have questions so far. Huwag kayong mahiya. Ano lang tayo, in good fun lang to. Bahala kayo dyan kung chat yung gusto niyo. Sige, pwede rin naman. Ano po pala reason bakit po walang educational requirements para sa tumatakbo for public office? I'm not sure about this really, no? Hindi ko sure kung tama ako pero what I understood was kaya walang educational qualification is that we are a democratic country, and since everyone has the right to vote, and at the same time everyone has the right to serve yung mga tao, no? And that is regardless of whether he is educated or not. Yun yung point na gusto sabihin, no? Sige, yes, Mr. Legasin, and then later Mr. Astudillo.
Sir, I just wanna ask, sir, kung bakit mabagal yung pagtakbo ng mga kaso sa Philippines, sir. Is it the lack of courts, sir? The lack of lawyers? Or mabagal talaga siya in nature? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. think that is a common question dun sa ano na sa mga questions nyo. The reason why it's slow is una, there are very little na parang sobrang konti ng courts. Sobrang daming backlogs when you get to courts, no? Minsan sa sobrang dami, for example, in one of my hearings, I'm lucky because I'm from the I'm ano, no, connected to the government. So I our cases are really raffled every month. Pero for others, especially those of lesser importance like civil cases, ano siya, as in it will take 2 months, mga ganon, 3 months for the next resetting, depende sa caseload ng ano, no, ng court. And that is scary, no? That is weird. Kasi what if, for example, along that time na nagkakaroon ng developments yung case, na ano na, parang na, pangalan nito, na parang may namatay or may magkakaroon ng changes in the circumstances, yun na naman, that will affect the case, and then later, wala. O, diba? Parang matagal, sobrang tagal ng mga kaso. And that is primarily because of the lack of courts, lack of lawyers din. Kaya din siguro, kaya din siguro, kaya rin siguro maraming pumasa ngayon to accommodate to accommodate the need for lawyers, no? Pero that is not, of course, to diminish yung achievements ng ibang tao, but really we need more lawyers, really. Because there are a lot of career paths that you can go. You can go to government, you can go to public, you can go as PAO, mga ganyan, sa prosecutor's office, sa courts mismo. You can go to the academe, you can go to you can do private practice, which is really not a very weirdly, hindi ganun karami ang nagpa-private practice, no? So yan. We need lawyers, we need courts, we need court staff. Marami. And we need IT. IT that is working, no? IT infrastructure. Yes, Mr. Astudillo?
Hello, sir. Rinig po ako.
Yeah.
Ito po ay parang to supplement the question of nung mas nauna pa. Nung regarding po dun sa position ng government officials. Di ba po, ideally, base po sa Constitution, any person can run for government office.
Yes.
Pero in reality, tulad po nung nangyari noong nito lang pong eleksyon, may mga tumakbo po. Halimbawa yung security guard na tumatakbo po sa Senado, pero dineclare po silang nuisance candidate. Hindi po ba parang hindi po nasusunod yung kung ano yung gusto pong mangyari ng saligang batas? At kung mangyari man po na siguro meron po talagang standard, siguro ganito po yung gusto nilang mangyari, hindi po ba sa tingin nyo mas okay po na i-revise na yung saligang batas at itaas na po yung qualification?
Well, there's really no problem with me kung itaas yung qualification, no? Because really minsan din it has something to do with yung educational attainment, but that is also must be seen side by side with yung parang elitism that comes with that view, no? Kasi paano naman yung mga mahirap na walang kakayahan na makapag-aral, pero they have the capacity, they are willing to serve the people, mga ganyan. So the requirement of college education must be measured against that social fact, no? That really hindi lahat ay nakakapag-aral sa Pilipinas. Pero because of the tertiary education, because of the free tertiary education, maybe that should be rethinked, ano? Regarding naman doon sa mga security guards, mga ganyan or mga lesser importance, really. I understand the wisdom behind that, no? Pero whether that is okay or not, mukhang hindi rin, no? It doesn't sit well with me. Pero I understand that it is for administrative feasibility, no? Parang ano siya, para mas madaling i-administer yung natin, yung elections. Kasi for example, if everyone will file and hindi mo sila i-trim down for whatever reason, talagang mahaba yung balota natin, no? And we will have difficulty parang counting, for example, hindi naman counting, no? Kasi ngayon parang weirdly sobrang bilis ng election, sobrang bilis ng results. Some people interpret that as something else, but for me that's mabilis, no? So yun,
Thank you po.
it will be a different story if we will, kasi ang fina-factor in nila yata is yung widespread, yung ano niya yung influence, yung sphere of influence niya, yung potential na kung saan makakakuha ng boto, and they trim down the list because of that. Pero I don't agree with that idea. Thank you, Eljon, for your question. It is Algus.
Yes, sir. Algus po.
Yes. What's your question?
Okay. So, marinig
Ako lang ba? Or
hello
hindi?
po.
Yeah.
Okay. So, tanong ko lang po kung ano po yung kaibahan ng bail and fine. And tanong ko rin po about kasi medyo malabo kasi yung about sa Electoral Tribunal.
Yeah.
Then, gusto ko po itanong kung ano pong, sino lang po ang may authority na i-process ang Electoral Tribunal and ano po yung sample niya.
Supreme
Salamat po.
Okay.
Justice.
Wait. Do you have two-part? You have a two-part question, like regarding the Electoral Tribunal and yung isa niyan? Sorry.
The difference between bail and fine.
Okay. Yung bail, simple na lang natin, yung bail piyansa, it means wala pang decision. You file for a bail kung wala pang decision, pero yung fine is something that is paid, na decide na ng court kung magkano yung babayaran mo. So for example, if they found you guilty, if they find you guilty, there is a corresponding fine for that if the law provides. Pero yung sa bail, yun yung temporary liberty mo hanggat hindi pa lumalabas yung decision. Regarding dun sa electoral tribunals, the electoral tribunals are actually parang dictated by the Constitution already. The Presidential Electoral Tribunal settles matters concerning yung sa President and Vice President. Both chambers of the Congress have their own electoral tribunals of their own, no? So merong Senate Electoral Tribunal, merong House of Representatives Electoral Tribunal. They decide para dun sa mga respective na mga sa mga members nila. Otherwise, they will have to go through COMELEC, no? Yung iba. So COMELEC yung iba, yung mga mas mga importanteng positions, they have their own electoral tribunals. So yun yung answer dun sa tanong. Yes, Jamil?
Yes po, hello po. I'd just like to ask, what happens if during inquest po, the prosecutor finds it that there was no legal basis for an unwarranted arrest? May mangyayari po bang possible sa law enforcement entity na nag-enforce po ng unwarranted arrest? Or may legal reprieve po ba yung in-arrest na without warrant?
Yeah, ideally, of course, we will be talking here of ideal and what's happening. Ideally, meron dapat pananagutan, di ba? There must be something that there must be some sort of penalty for that. Pero in reality, in what's happening really is parang they just let it go in real life, which is sad. Minsan, supposedly meron, because it is a separate crime to arrest ng parang kunwari warrantless arrest, pero dapat meron. Supposedly that's a crime, pero in reality that really doesn't happen a lot. So okay ba yan, Eljon? Ano pa niyo? Sorry.
Jamil po. Just a follow-up.
Yeah.
For example po, gusto pong isampahan ng criminal charge po yung officer na yun, for example. Well, he would have to do that on his own volition po. Like parang kailangan separate process po siya, hindi siya automatic, no? Ganun po yung mangyayari, attorney.
Yes, usually they do that.
Okay.
Oo.
Okay, understood po. Thank you.
Yes, Sophia.
Yes po, thank you. I just want to ask po in regards sa criminal law. In Sharia law, there's a so-called kitas, which is a death penalty. Is it allowable po ba sa law natin if, for example, sa Muslim nakapatay siya and it is punishable by death penalty?
What was the
Okay. Yung sa ano, yeah, we recognize na
Hindi pa siya applicable sa ato.
okay, wait, sorry. Okay. You're regarding yung sa ano, actually sa atin, yung sa Sharia is usually mostly personal laws only. No? Regarding yung sa personal laws lang yung coverage usually ng sa Sharia. And yung criminal laws, they are subject to the same criminal laws as us, no? And by extension, pero sorry if I don't claim to be an expert in Islamic law or in Sharia. Pero I think they are hindi sila covered, parang they are still covered by the prohibition against death penalty. Kasi yung prosecution naman is usually prosecuted sa on the level of the state. No, wala namang prosecutor sa separate yata ang Sharia if I remember it correctly. So, but I would really love to study about Sharia, and there's an institute in UP that offers Sharia, but I really don't have the time yet to do it. So thank you, Sawiya, but I'll try. I'll check. I'll double check my answer to that.
Yes po, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so there being no more questions na nagre-raise. Wait lang, may mga dito pala. Pwede po bang magbayad para ma-prioritize ang kaso mo? No, of course not. Equal access to courts. That is a constitutional right. So regardless of mayaman ka or mahirap, you will have to go through the same process. Okay, I'll stop there. What will be the role of the Supreme Court when we shift to federal government? It depends really on how the government will on what the guidelines of the new federal system will be. Pero ideally kung ganun pero if you will pattern it doon sa pattern ng US, the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter of only constitutional issues. Sabagay, constitutional issues lang din naman yung ngayon. Pero there will be individual Supreme Courts within each state, and the Supreme Court will only entertain constitutional questions. No? Ano lang siya? Appellate lang na constitutional ang magiging function niya. Difference between accomplice and accessory. Yung sa ganito yun, ang basic difference ng accomplice at accessory, si accomplice, alam niya yung krimen. Nandoon siya when the crime was committed, or he is an important element of the crime. He has an important role in the crime, except that he is not really a principal nga. Doon sa accessories, hindi necessary na may ginawa siya for the crime to be committed, no? Pero he or she harbored yung tao para ma-facilitate yung pagtatago niya, tinago niya, mga ganun yung sa accessory. Meron bang mga question dito? Kapag na-decriminalize ba ang isang krimen under the law, mapapalaya ba ang na-convict sa crime na ito? Yes. Because that is a law that is favorable to the accused, favorable to the person, so pwede siya mapalaya. Paano kung higher positions, possible po ba ma-raise ang qualifications if the Constitution says so? Pero in this case, hindi. Pero kung mapapalitan ng Constitution, pwede. Paano po yung Filipino residing abroad na nag-commit ng crime? Pwede po ba siyang maparusahan? Itong cybercrime kasi is really a a game changer kasi nawawala yung sense ng territoriality, no? Parang, teka, hanggang saan ba ang teritoryo ng Pilipinas? Is a cybercrime really, does cybercrime really have territory to begin with? Hindi pa nasasagot yung tanong na yan hanggang ngayon. Yes, Miss Villalino.
Yes. I just want to ask, because you mentioned earlier of the punishments, your
Hindi ko
execution.
marinig. Sorry. You are not audible. Naririnig ko siya. I think you are using a headphone, an earphone, pero natanggal. May static eh.
Naririnig na po.
Yes. Oo.
Okay, sir. Good evening po, Otro. Again, you mentioned earlier of punishment, sir. I just want to ask kung meron ba sa kanila most effective or meron bang least effective in dealing with criminals?
Actually, I think yung studies regarding I can only speak for death penalty because the study is there. So ano siya? Death penalty does not work. So yun yung siguro yun yung premise that I will be yun yung conclusion that I can derive from most of the death penalty death penalty parang debate. Kasi it is really not the gravity, hindi yung bigat ng punishment. I know you've heard this from Sheldon already, from Lenny Robredo, but really it's not the gravity of the offense that matters, it's the certainty of prosecution. Hindi yung bigat ng penalty ang magiging sukat, ang magiging effective, pero what is effective is kapag naipapakulong mo yung mga dapat ipakulong, that makes it effective, no? Regarding yung sa kung alin sa mga penalties ang there are countries who are not really into yung kulong na mentality when it comes to when it comes to penalties, no? But they are really into rehabilitation, which may be a good alternative when it comes to drugs, no? But we are really not that I'm really not sure to be candid na of what is the most effective penalty. But what we have here in the Philippines is really just imprisonment, no? So far. So thank you. Let's entertain the last two questions and then we proceed to the questions that you gave doon sa natin. For a while lang ha, 5 seconds. Let's start with Raymond first and then we'll go back to you, John.
Hello po, attorney. Good evening po.
Good evening.
Attorney, question lang po. Gusto ko lang pong malaman yung role difference between prosecutors, ombudsman, sandigan bayan, and solicitor general. Kasi medyo confused po ako dun sa mga role at kung saan po sila pumapasok when it comes sa... Thank you po, attorney.
Okay. So regarding yung sa let's start with prosecutor and ombudsman first kasi medyo similar yung similar yung work nila. So prosecutor and ombudsman, they are prosecutorial bodies, meaning sila yung nagfa-file ng information sa court. Sila yung nagfa-file ng what happened here, sila yung i-inform sa court that a crime happened and yung accused is a potential na nakagawa ng krimen. Ombudsman is just a special prosecutor of some sort dahil he is usually involved only with cases of government officials and government officers and employees. So yun yung distinct about the ombudsman. So gets natin yun nasa prosecutorial sila, si prosecutor at saka si ombudsman. Si Sandigan Bayan naman is just a court for government-related uh, government-related crimes, government-related felonies, no? Kumbaga siya yung korte para sa mga government officials na high ranking usually, yung sa Sandigan Bayan. Ano yung tanong mong isa?
Yung sa Solgen po.
Solgen. The
Attorney.
Solicitor General naman is the chief, parang siya yung abogado ng government, no? Everything that has public interest, like ano ba yung mga cases, mga land registration na government ang involved, ganyan, or mga annulment, mga declaration of nullity, that is where the government comes in. Kapag merong public interest na vested, kumbaga, hindi siya court, hindi rin siya prosecutor, para siyang special lawyer ng government, no? Kapag may government interest na involved sa case, they come in. Yun yung function ng Solgen. Usually, yun yung mahirap na part ng annulment sa Pilipinas or declaration of nullity kasi the Solgen comes in, opposes the annulment or declaration of nullity kasi may public interest na vested doon. So yan. Thank you
po, Attorney.
Let's take your question, John Art.
Sir, di ba you've mentioned that the three branches of government is co-equal, sir, meaning they are superior in their own sphere, sir. So bakit po sa law of succession, sir, yung susunod sa Vice President is yung Senate President? Well, in fact, siya yung pinakamataas sa legislative. Why? Bakit niya pa kailangan bumaba sa ikalawang post, executive, sir? Thank you.
Yung really, the appointment of a Senate President is really not, hindi siya elective position. It is merely parang lang yan, additional lang yan sa pagiging pagiging senator. Lang yun, parang there has to be someone who will lead them parang ceremonially, no? Ganun lang yung sa Senate President. Hindi siya, it's not really, it doesn't really have that much of task, no? Unlike kapag President at Vice President, kasi elective yung mga yan. So, the only reason why it is the Senate President who is kasi wala naman ng ibang other high-ranking officials that can take over. And definitely, the executive cannot be run by the Supreme Court, Hindi pwede 'yon. So, temporary lang naman 'yon. In an acting capacity lang siya. But that doesn't really nawawala yung nawawala yung character niya as as part of the legislative department if he or she becomes an acting president or vice president. Yun lang yun. It doesn't really affect yung separation of powers. So we proceed with our discussion. Much as I want to entertain more questions, no? Kasi malapit, it's 8:20 already. Okay, De Lima's case. Why was Leila De Lima serving as senator arrested, given that the fact that one of the privileges of a member of a legislative branch is that they are not to be arrested for a crime or an alleged case? In the case of Leila De Lima, he was charged for sa drugs na related. Definitely that is more than 6 years yung penalty nun if convicted siya. So, ang exception lang doon sa kanila exception from arrest is really until just 6 years below. More than 6 years, hindi na sila covered ng immunity from arrest. No? In your opinion, has the party list system failed in its purpose where it politically represents the underrepresented? Yes, that is a sad reality about the party list system. No? Yung party list system natin, supposedly papagaan ng buhay ng mga underrepresented or nagiging boses ng mga underrepresented has not really done anything to that effect, no? Wala masyado. And if you'll notice, yung mga tumatakbo na party list who are popular are usually from political clans themselves. They are from political families, no? Yung mga yung mga kunwari, ipapasa sa anak yung district representative, no? Ang yung tatay mag-create ng party list. And then they have 2 seats in Congress, no? Which is sad. Okay, does the government has its limits? Of course, that's why we have the Constitution. It limits the power of the unbridled power of the government. Ang government powerful yan. That is also the reason why we have our Bill of Rights, because if you don't have the Bill of Rights, there's really no parang what's stopping them from being, di ba? From being cruel. Wala. So is it possible to revise the qualifications for would-be public officials, especially President, Vice President, Senators? Sagot na natin yan kanina, only if there is a constitutional amendment or revision. Next, what will be the changes in the Philippine government, including the 3 branches of governments and its power when it turns to federalism? Of course, there will be a great change really in how this works, no? Kasi your prime minister will come from the legislative department. So the executive branch comes from the legislative from the legislature, diba? So that will be the first major change there. Also, the constitution, the court system will be different as well. Kumbaga, the Supreme Court will be hearing only a very few cases na, kasi all the other cases will be tried in other in different will be tried by there will be a kung gan sabi ko kanina, if there will be a similar setup as the US, magkakaroon ng Supreme Courts in every state. So, could an abuse of eminent domain power be committed by official self-gain? Of course, there's always that possibility na pwedeng gamitin ang eminent domain, because the eminent domain, sabi dyan, public purpose, di ba? There must be public purpose. Pero, pag napatunayan that there is no public purpose there and it is really just for the officials' whim, wala yun. Pwedeng ma-invalidate yung expropriation. Pwedeng mabalik yung property dun sa tao. Eminent domain ulit. Is there a specific measure of just compensation? None. The just compensation is full and fair. That is as far as jurisprudence parang defines just compensation, no? Circumstantial yan. Pero they can be hinted by, for example, yung zonal valuation, mga ganyan nung lupa. Pero other than that, there's really no hard and fast rule on how to measure yung just compensation na tinatawag when it comes to eminent domain. Considering that the federal system is prone to political dynasty, so as the presidential, can we revise the Constitution to explicitly prohibit and describe what constitutes dynasty? Yes. The problem with the Constitution and how it is framed kasi now, in relation to political dynasty, is that it does not really define political dynasty, and the Constitution says na kailangan the Congress must define what political dynasty means. Hanggang ngayon wala pa ring batas na nagde-define ng political dynasty. So practically wala pa rin yan, no? Hindi pa rin yan effective. Wala pa ring nangyayari about that. So why there are a lot of members of the House of Representatives? Marami daw ba ang House of Representatives? The Constitution says na 250 dapat, pero pwede madagdagan by the creation of new districts. Marami na ba ngayon? 300? I don't think so. Can we lessen the members? Yes, if you change the Constitution. Next, is it proper for the government to take the land of native people, blah, 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 leaving them without access to livelihood? Of course not. That is against their human rights as a collective, as indigenous peoples. Of course, kung ganyan lang, if this is the case, no, na talagang wala silang houses and livelihood, then that is a clear violation of their human rights, no? Upon appointing the cabinet members, what could the president's basis or qualifications on choosing who to appoint? There's really no qualification. There's really nothing that prevents a president from appointing anyone for that position. Is there a distinctive law for Muslim courts that is not applicable to other courts? There is what we call the Sharia law, and there are yung personal laws Muslim personal laws under the Sharia law are parang made an exception, no? And they are tried in Sharia courts. So yan. Is federalism better than unitary? Ako actually, I don't really see the point in changing into a federal government. Although if it's there, di ba? I will not really object there. Pero the thing is, ang ano kasi ngayon, ang mga drive to push for federalism, parang think of it as if it's the only solution. It is a cure-all for all the problems of this country. But really, no. Hindi yun eh. It doesn't matter really if it's federalism or unitary. The problem has been systemic. The problem has been ever since corruption, mga ganyan. And federalism or unitary doesn't really change a lot if we are putting the same people in government, no? Kung pare-pareho lang din mga tao na kung pare-parehong tao lang din ang magra-run ng bansa natin, there's really not much difference, no? The change in the system is not really about our how our government is arranged, no? How the government system, not really, but other processes in the government must be changed. And that is a systemic change, pero not really federalism and unitary. I don't think the solution will be solved because of that. Can the constituents sue government officials if they did not do their functions and not responsibly use their powers? Yes. No? If yung mga crimes involving public officials can be filed by anyone. Kahit sino pwede mag-file ng case. How come there are 24 senators when ito medyo medyo common sense question, pero common mistake really. How come there are 24 senators when we only elect 12 every election? Di ba every 3 years nagkakaroon tayo ng senatorial elections? So 12 ngayon, kunwari 2022, by 2025 we elect another 12. Mag-expire naman yung term ng iba na na-elect noong 2019. So ganun lang siya salit-salit. Kaya at any given time, meron tayong 24 senators, pero we only elect 12 senators every 3 years. Kasi di ba 6 years ang term nila? So yan. The Alter Ego Doctrine states that the actions of the secretaries are a reflection of the presidents. Does this imply that the secretaries cannot do anything but to follow the president's command? Well, they can do, ideally yes. Hindi sila pwedeng gumawa ng anything that is not really without the imprimatur of the president. Pero if they do na may gawin sila, no, the president can always invalidate that, no? Pwede niyang i-invalidate yung ginawa nila. Okay, next. Can party lists also make bills? Of course, they are members of the Congress. What else are they going to do if not bills? So yeah. Okay, next. Here is on criminal law naman. What are the pardoning powers of the president and their differences? So meron tayong mga iba't ibang executive clemencies under the law, no? Meron tayong pardon. The pardon can be absolute or conditional. Yung absolute pardon talagang ma-wipe out lahat nung crime. It's if the crime did not happen and there are no conditions, no? Sa conditional pardon, well, mayroon siyang condition. It's like absolute pardon pero meron siyang conditions. Sa parole is temporary liberty ang parole. Pwede siyang makalaya pero it doesn't really erase the crime, no? Hindi nawawala yung krimen. Who is annotated? Alright. Sige, wait lang Dalito ako din. Okay. So yan. Meron din tayong tinatawag na reprieve. By reprieve, yun yung pwede niyang i-postpone yung penalty. Especially if it's death penalty. Yung mga napapanood nyo sa TV na tinawagan ng president yung mga yung mga magsisilya elektrika ganyan. Pwedeng gawin yun, pwedeng mangyari. O i-postpone nyo muna yung death penalty para sa kanya. Mga ganun. That is one of the executive clemencies. Also commutation, pwedeng bawasan yung penalty. Hindi naman totally tanggalin, pero bawasan. So those are your executive clemencies. Is bail a right? Yes, we have already discussed. I think we have discussed this last week. When an accomplice of a crime stands in court as a witness, so his or her penalty can be lessened. Is that possible? And if yes, how and why is it justifiable to lessen his penalty? Actually, a person can actually apply as a witness, as a state witness, and not really be prosecuted to begin with. No, pwedeng hindi siya makasuhan. Basta he or she agrees na maging witness siya ng state. Provided na hindi siya yung pinaka-guilty sa kanilang lahat, no? Anyone really who has prior knowledge of the case can be state witnesses. So, yeah. Next. Justifiable ba nabawasan ang penalty or tanggalin absolutely yung penalty nila? Oo naman, no? They are risking their lives to be witnesses, no? And kung wala yung witness, kung wala yung testimony nila, hindi naman din magpo-proceed yung kaso. So, it is only fair that na matanggalan sila ng penalty. Okay. Yung sa case ng security guard, do you know this? Did the PNP have reasonable grounds to arrest the culprit without a warrant in the same day that it happened by virtue of hot pursuit? Why was there only invitation and show cause order when the incident happened in broad daylight? Regarding the hot pursuit, sa akin kasi it doesn't qualify, for me, it doesn't qualify as hot pursuit. Hot pursuit is when yung nangyari siya and then ultimately walang cessation ng act, talagang tumakbo siya and hinabol siya. That is hot pursuit for me. Although there are cases in the Supreme Court that says that hot pursuit happens even if it is within the day, mga ganyan, pero not in this case. No? Hindi siya hot pursuit and we need warrant for that. Siguro that is something that people must understand, no? Hindi naman basta-bastang ganun lang. Yes, there is evidence, andyan na tayo, pero there is also the concept of due process. No? And regarding yung show cause order that was issued by the LTO, that is a good question because that is exactly what I do. No? Yung show cause order kasi the LTO in that case is not really entitled to arrest a person. No, hindi siya pwedeng mag-arrest. It's the duty of the police to do that. And regarding the license, again, there is also the concept of due process wherein we ask him or her to explain. And kapag nag-explain na siya, then we can order for the suspension of the license. No, we can order for payment of penalties, payment of fines. Pero even before, hindi pwedeng agad-agad na arestuhin because again, it's not hot pursuit. And for the LTO, hindi ganun yung process. The process is really to give the person the opportunity to be heard. So, hindi pwedeng outright yung pagtanggal ng license, no? So there needs to be a show cause order first. So yeah, just to balance off yung strong feelings ng mga tao about the case of the security guard being rolled over. But again, the evidence is pretty clear, malinaw yung ganon. So I think magaling ang lawyer niya kung maano pa siya, ma-exculpate pa siya doon. Pero siguro the possible framing doon ay hindi ka sure kung sino yung nandoon sa loob. Diba? Because it's really not seen in the video kung sino yung nandun. So, yeah. Next, what is the easiest way to distinguish attempted, frustrated, and consummated murder? Itong attempted, I forgot to discuss this, pero discuss ko na lang din dito. When you say attempted, there was intent to commit a crime, pero hindi lahat ng steps to commit the crime nangyari. No, hindi may ibang elements, may ibang for some reason hindi nagawa lahat ng tao to execute a proper death ng tao. So frustrated, lahat ng elements ng crime nangyari pero hindi siya naging murder dahil hindi namatay yung tao. No? Hindi nangyari because there is something, siguro dahil sa intervention ng medicine, no? Dahil sa intervention ng naitakbo sa ambulansya, mga ganyan, that is frustrated. And consummated, of course, nandoon yung lahat ng elements ng crime of murder, namatay yung tao. So that is the easiest way that I can distinguish really yung attempted, frustrated, and consummated. So for example, binaril ka, hindi ka natamaan or binaril ka pero pero hindi for some reason hindi tumama, that is attempted. Pag binaril ka, natamaan ka sa isang vital area pero hindi ka namatay, frustrated. Binaril ka, binaril ka sa isang sa key area ng katawan mo na that will normally produce the crime and then namatay ka nga, that's consummated murder. Pero by murder, hindi lang to basta homicide. Iba rin, meron pang qualification para maging murder siya. May murder siya if it's done with treachery, mga ganyan. Some of the aggravating circumstances that we mentioned a while ago. Okay? So next, what are examples of non-bailable cases? Yung sa yung kay Dilima, use and ano ba yan? Yung sa drugs, ganyan, usually non-bailable. Yung sale. Possession and sale, mga ganyan, non-bailable yung mga yon, rape, mga ganyan. Yung mga heinous crimes, these are usually non-bailable. How did these cases become non-bailable? They are classified as heinous crimes. Okay? Under the penalties, if the person committed multiple crimes, what will be the penalties? Depende. Did he commit multiple crimes with a single intent? Iisa lang yung criminal intent or iisa lang yung pagkakataon or multiple crimes over a span of one week, mga ganyan. Depende kasi pwede mong sabihin na iba't ibang klase ng crimes yon and that these are dealt with separately, no? Kunwari, noong isang araw pumatay siya tapos ngayon nagnakaw, tapos sa susunod nag-drugs, those are different crimes and they are prosecuted differently parang separately from each other. Pero what if nirape niya yung tao tsaka niya pinatay, all in the same instance? That could be an example of a complex crime. Pero I will not discuss complex crimes here kasi masyadong madugo yun for an introductory course. Is it possible to lower the years of imprisonment to lower down the number of prisoners, or will this just cause negative effect to the country? Siguro hindi lower the years of imprisonment, pero to siguro forgo yung imprisonment para sa mga lesser offenses, no? Yung mga pwede namang pwede namang community service or pwedeng under probation or pwedeng lang siya, yung hindi na magre-resort to kulong, sana yun yung siguro yung pwedeng paraan para ma-declog yung mga preso natin. And also pala in a documentary by I think GMA, marami sa mga nakakulong are actually pala nito, they are detention prisoners at matagal ng kahit pa mag-guilty sila, yung maximum penalty na mai-impose sa kanila ay matagal na nilang na-serve, pero dahil wala silang mga abogado, mga ganyan, sobrang tagal ng galaw ng kaso, they are committed sa mga sa mga prison cells natin ng napakatagal na panahon. Kahit na simpleng bagay lang yung krimen nila, dahil hindi pa natatapos yung kaso at hindi pa or wala silang abogado, hindi sila napapalabas. So that is something that we need to siguro check with sa mga natin, no? sa mga prisons natin. Siguro madali lang naman kasi yun ilagay mo na lang sa Excel tapos lagyan mo ng time kung paso na yung kung tapos na yung niya, dapat na imprisonment niya, dapat wala na pero I don't know. Sa akin simple lang yung solusyon, pero it's not really that apparently to some, no? Why do you think there is a rule that confessions made during police custody cannot be used as evidence against the accused? Pwede kasi yung pwedeng yung mga coerced na mga testimony, like yung mga, di ba dati yung mga sinasalvage ng mga police, yung mga yung mga prisoners, no? Para sa mga pelikula ni Fernando po, mga ganyan. So that is why we don't do that anymore, no? Hindi na natin tinatanggap ang yung confessions made na habang nasa police custody sila. So next, why does adultery have lesser penalty than concubinage? Gato kasi yan, no? Ang justification kasi nila is that when a female has intercourse with another person, with a man, mas malaki ang magiging effect dahil there's a possibility na magkaroon ng magkaroon ng foreign na genes within the family. Whereas kung ang isang lalaki ay nag-commit ng adultery, wala namang effect sa gene sa family. Parang ganun yung justification nila. Pero I don't find that fair at all. In fact, there is a proposal by, I think, the Philippine Commission on Women to decriminalize adultery and concubinage altogether, no? Para ma-bridge yung gap. To decriminalize it means tatanggalan siya ng penalty, walang kulong, pero merong civil repercussions. Ganun yung gusto mangyari ng PCW. And I support that 100%. Okay. Next, is there a need to revive the death penalty in the Philippines? I don't think there is a need. I only think that we need to be more, parang dapat nating increase ay yung rate ng prosecution sa Pilipinas. I think this ends the questions na sinend nyo sa atin. Malinaw ba yung mga sagot? Have you, okay ba tayo dun sa mga sagot na nakuha natin?
Yes po, attorney.
Yes po, attorney.
Yes
Yeah,
po, attorney.
I hope so too.
Yes po, attorney.
So,
Yes po.
we finished early today. Pero if I can appeal that we finish early kasi may deadline pa ako bukas na paper. So, alam niyo yan, estudyante problems, no? We have deadlines. So I hope you learned a lot from this from this week, yung sa courses natin this week. And I think that is a good this is a good preview for you for the mga subjects na discuss natin, no? It's really a good topic. But next week we'll have the remaining 2 weeks we'll have the remaining 4 courses, and Ivan will I delegated to Ivan the last one, yung sa yung about sa tips on how to survive law school, but I will also give my tips of my own, pero siya na lang yung pinaka main na speaker siguro. So before we end, alam niyo naman yan that we will have our photo op. Para sa mga post ulit sa page, no? So, do you prefer na tayo? Meron tayong yung question and answer na live? Okay ba yan? Yung
Yes
parang
po.
kanina na ginawa natin. Alright.
Yes, attorney.
Smile na apat ang parang na enough for 4 frames, no? Kasi mahirap. Okay. 1, 2, wait lang. 1, 2, 3. Wala mo na mag-chat para hindi matakpan yung iba. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. Okay. Patanggalin lang natin muna itong nandito sa baba. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. So, see you next week again. And I hope that by next week, yung mga iba, mag-ano na rin para ma-minimize natin yung questions. If you prefer, actually, we will just do it live, yung buong questions. Hindi na ako no, I think I need to require yung yung questions. No? By next meeting pala, hindi ko na ibibigay yung password kapag hindi nagsagot doon sa, natin, no? Doon sa Google Forms. Okay? So, it's nice seeing you again tonight. Thank you guys for coming. See you next week and stay healthy, stay safe.
Thank you po, attorney.
Thank you po, attorney. Bye po.
Thank you po, attorney.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you
you
po,
around
attorney.
kung saan man kayo.
Thank you po.
I'll let you know kung nasa sang lupalop ng Pilipinas man ako, and we might see each other. So, bye.
Thank you po, attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.